I'm Whitney, 29 years old. And last April, my mother tried to sell my wedding day to my cousin without bothering to ask me first. Picture this: 47 missed calls lighting up a phone screen at 3 o'clock in the morning. A 14-page spreadsheet totaling 83,247. And me standing barefoot on a beach in the Maldives in a white chiffon dress, salt air in my hair, my husband's hand in mine. While 200 guests back in Portland, Oregon, stared at an empty ballroom and wondered where the bride had gone. That all happened between March and June of last year. And I promise you, every dollar and every detail matters. Before I walk you through it, if this story hits home for you, take a second to hit like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to. And while you're at it, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I'd love to know. Now, let me take you back to March, the day I first realized my family had never actually seen me. My name is Whitney Collier, and for 7 years, I was the most reliable piece of financial infrastructure my family ever owned. I need to give you the picture. My mother, Diane Collier, 56, worked as an administrative manager at a public high school in Portland. Solid job, about $54,000 a year. Her older sister, my Aunt Lorraine Holloway, 61, had always been the matriarch of the extended family. Whatever Lorraine decided, Diane followed. And whatever Diane needed, she came to me. It started small. In 2017, the year I landed my first real position as a financial analyst at Harrove and Ellis Consulting. Mom called about a leaky roof, $400. Then it was $600 for an insurance gap. Then $8,500 for a down payment on my cousin Megan's car. She needs it for work, Whitney. You know how it is. Then $12,000 to remodel Mom's basement. Then $7,200 for my younger brother Tyler's certification program. He was 20 at the time. And Mom swore the community college wouldn't hold his spot without a deposit by Friday. Every single time I hesitated, the playbook ran like clockwork. Phase 1. Tears. You're the oldest. I have no one else to lean on. Phase 2, the cold shoulder. Radio silence for days, sometimes a full week. Phase 3, the conference call. Lorraine would dial in with that low, disappointed voice. Whitney, sweetheart, your mother is heartbroken. Is money really more important than family? 3 phases, 100 success rate, 7 years running. Somewhere around January 2019, I started logging every transfer, every Venmo, every check in a private Excel spreadsheet. Habit of the job, I told myself, I'm an analyst. I track numbers. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even a plan. It was the only place where the truth existed exactly as it happened, down to the penny. I had no idea that spreadsheet would eventually blow my family apart. If I was the family's silent ATM, my cousin Megan Holloway was its golden trophy. Megan was 28, a year younger than me, Aunt Lorraine's only daughter. She worked freelance marketing gigs, income unpredictable, maybe $35,000 a year on a good year. But you'd never guess that from her Instagram. 12,000 followers, curated brunches, boutique hotel lobbies, outfit of the day posts with captions like living my best life. She looked like a woman pulling in 6 figures, and our family treated her like one. At every holiday dinner, every birthday gathering, Megan was the sun. Mom would nudge me under the table. See how Megan works a room? You should try that sometime. Aunt Lorraine once said in front of 8 relatives. Megan has real style. Not everyone does, and that's fine. She looked directly at me when she said, not everyone. Here's the moment that branded itself into my memory. Thanksgiving 2023. I paid for the entire event. Venue, rental, catering, decorations, $3,200. When Aunt Lorraine stood to give thanks, she smiled at my mother and said, Diane, thank you for putting this beautiful evening together. Not a glance my way, not a syllable of my name. I sat there holding my fork and smiled because that was what I'd been trained to do. Nathan noticed. We'd been dating about a year by then, and on the drive home, he turned the radio down and said quietly, "Did you catch that?" Nobody said thank you to you. I had caught it. I'd been catching it for years. I just hadn't admitted what it meant. There's one more thing about Megan you need to know. And I wouldn't learn this detail until later that winter. She was carrying $31,000 in credit card debt. Keep that number in your pocket. It'll explain everything that comes next. In October 2024, Nathan Brennan asked me to marry him. He did it at Pedo Mansion, that gorgeous overlook above Portland, where you can see the city, the river, Mount Hood if the sky is clear. He'd packed a thermos of my favorite Earl Grey, and when he knelt on the damp stone, he didn't give a speech. He just said, "Whitney, you're the first person who doesn't need a reason to be loved. Will you let me prove that every day?" I said yes before he finished the sentence. Nathan was 31, a software engineer at a fintech company downtown, pulling in about $118,000 a year, steady, practical, protective without being pushy. He was the first person from outside the Collier orbit, and because of that, he could see the pattern I'd been too deep inside to recognize. We chose Ridgewood Estate, an elegant venue just outside Portland, capacity 200, ivy-covered stone walls, exactly the kind of place I'd scrolled past for years, thinking that's for other people. The full package came to $28,000. We signed the contract in November 2024, put down a $50,000 deposit of $14,000, and the coordinator, Jill Petton, meticulous, mid-40s, the kind of woman who triple-checks seating charts, walked us through every clause. I remember her tapping section 7.2 with her pen. If you cancel at least 8 weeks before the event date, we refund 80 of the deposit. I nodded politely. Why would I ever need that? This venue was the first significant amount of money I had ever spent on myself without asking anyone's permission. When I told Mom, she said, "Oh, congrats." Aunt Lorraine's first question was, "How many people does it hold?" Megan commented on my Instagram announcement. One word, cute. One word, after everything I'd paid for, one word. March 12th changed everything. Nathan and I had set up a shared email for wedding planning, one inbox for vendor quotes, RSVPs, fabric swatches, all of it. That Wednesday evening, Nathan was scrolling through confirmations from the florist when he stopped mid-scroll and said, "Whitney, come look at this." It was a forwarded message from Jill Petton. Her tone was polite but careful. "Hi, Whitney. I received an email from someone claiming to represent your family requesting a second reception be added to your date. I wanted to confirm with you before making any changes. Please see the forwarded message below." Below Jill's note was the original email from my mother. "Dear Jill, I'm Diane Collier, Whitney's mother and family representative. We'd like to add a second celebration for my niece Megan Holloway on the same date, sharing the ballroom and splitting costs. Whitney has agreed to this arrangement. Please send us a revised quote. Thank you." I read it 3 times. My vision tunneled. Whitney has agreed to this arrangement. I had agreed to nothing. Nobody had called me, texted me, or even hinted at this. My hands were shaking when I dialed Mom. She picked up on the second ring. Breezy, like nothing in the world was wrong. "Oh, sweetie. I was going to tell you. Aunt Lorraine mentioned Megan just got engaged, too. And the venue is so gorgeous. So, we thought, why not share? You split $28,000, you only pay $14,000. It's a win for everyone. Don't be selfish about it. Don't be selfish." The woman who had taken $83,000 from me over 7 years was telling me not to be selfish about my own wedding. I managed 4 words before I hung up. I never agreed. "Mom," she called back twice. I didn't answer. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, laptop open, the apartment dark except for the blue glow of the screen. Nathan had gone to bed after squeezing my shoulder and saying, "Take the time you need." I opened the spreadsheet. I'd been updating it for 6 years. Columns for date, amount, purpose, who asked, how they asked, and a notes field where I sometimes pasted screenshots of the text messages that preceded each transfer. It had started as basic bookkeeping. Now scrolling from the first entry in January 2017 to the last one in February 2025, it read like something else entirely. I began tallying, not the way I usually did, skimming for monthly totals. This time I pulled every line into a summary sheet and let the formula run. Basement remodel for mom $12,000. Megan's car deposit $8,500. Tyler's certification tuition $7,200. Thanksgiving and Christmas gatherings, 7 years running, averaging roughly $3,500 each year, $24,500. Grandpa's funeral expenses that nobody else offered to cover, $6,800. Aunt Lorraine's 60th birthday party, $4,200. And then the long tail of emergencies. A broken furnace, a parking ticket, a bridesmaid dress for Megan's friend's wedding that somehow became my bill, a dental crown for mom, deposits and late fees and grocery runs and on and on. 20,047. The cell at the bottom turned bold, 83,247. I stared at it, then I opened a second column, amount family has spent on Whitney, and typed a 0. My birthday last year. No one called. No card, no text, no dinner. Mom forgot. I heard Nathan's footsteps behind me. He sat down, looked at the screen, and didn't say anything for a long time. Then quietly, "What do you want to do?" I didn't answer him. Not yet. The next morning, March 13th, I called Rosa Delgado. Rosa and I went back to undergrad. She was 33 now, a family law attorney with a small firm in Southeast Portland, the kind of friend who would pick up on the first ring at 7 a.m. and not ask why. I told her everything, the venue, the email, the 7 years, the number. She was quiet for about 10 seconds. Then she said, "Whitney, your mother impersonated your consent in writing to a third-party vendor. If Jill had acted on that email, you could have been on the hook for contract modifications you never authorized. That's not a family disagreement. That's misrepresentation of consent." The word misrepresentation landed in my chest like a brick. I'd spent my whole life calling it helping out. Rosa was calling it what it was. "Save everything," she said. The forwarded email, the original Jill's message. Screenshot your call log with your mother and Whitney. Whatever you decide, decide for you, not for Diane. I hung up and made 3 calls in 40 minutes. First, Jill Petun. I confirmed the contract was untouched. Diane's email had triggered no changes because Jill, bless her professional instincts, had checked with me first. Then I told Jill I needed to invoke Section 7.2, cancellation before 8 weeks. The wedding date was June 14th. We were 13 weeks out, well within the window. Jill processed the request that afternoon. 80 of 14,000, 11,200 back in our account within 10 business days. Second, a resort in the Maldives I'd bookmarked months ago on a daydream scroll. Seaside Haven 2-person beach ceremony package photographer private villa 3 nights total 9,800. Third, Nathan. He answered and before I could explain, he said, "Tell me when we leave." We booked flights for June 12th, Portland to Dubai to Malé. I told no one. 5 days later, on March 18th, I learned just how far ahead of me they'd been. A college friend tagged me in an Instagram story with a heart eyes emoji and the words, "OMG double wedding." I tapped through, confused, and there it was, Megan's story. A photo of a cream-colored invitation with gold foil lettering. Whitney and Nathan / Megan and Derek. June 14th, Ridgewood Estate, a double celebration of love. Meghan's caption, 2 brides, 1 magical night. I zoomed in. The fonts were elegant. The layout was professional. These weren't mock-ups. These were printed invitations, the kind you order in bulk, and according to the comments rolling in under Meghan's grid post, 150 of them had already been mailed to friends, to extended family, to my co-workers at Harrove and Ellis, to my boss. 150 people now believed I was happily sharing my wedding day with my cousin. 150 people had held that card in their hands and thought, how nice, a double celebration. I called Nathan at his desk. He listened, then said, measured and calm. They printed invitations before you said yes. That tells you everything you need to know about how they see you. He was right. In their version of reality, my agreement wasn't something they needed to obtain. It was something they assumed they already owned. I checked my records. The Richwood contract had been cancelled on March 14. Jill had sent a cancellation confirmation on the 15th to the email on file. Mine. The venue was gone. The catering tied to our booking was gone. But my family had no idea. They were building a party on a foundation that no longer existed. Rose's advice echoed. Not yet. Maldives' first truth after. So, I kept my mouth shut and the clock kept ticking. March 22nd, the dress fitting. Mom had arranged it, her word, not mine, at a bridal boutique on Southwest Broadway. The kind of place with champagne flutes by the door and mirrors that run floor to ceiling. When I walked in, they were already there. Mom, Aunt Lorraine, Meghan, and 2 other aunts whose names you don't need to remember. Everyone was smiling. Everyone had an opinion. Meghan went first. 4 dresses. Each one drew gasps, applause, phone cameras raised like she was walking a runway. Gorgeous, Aunt Lorraine said, dabbing her eye. Absolutely breathtaking. Meghan spun in front of the mirror and the room orbited her the way it always had. When my turn came, Mom said, just pick something simple, honey. You're not the flashy type anyway. I stepped onto the platform in a white A-line. Classic, clean, nothing wrong with it. The room was quiet. Nobody raised a phone. Lorraine examined her manicure. Meghan glanced up from her own reflection and said in a voice you'd use to compliment a child's finger painting. Oh, want me to take a pic for you, Whitney? I smiled and said, sure. One photo taken from a low angle that caught the fluorescent light and half of Lorraine's shoulder. That was my fitting. In the restroom afterward, I locked the stall, sat on the closed lid, and texted Nathan. I'm fine. 83 days. I'll wear this dress on a beach. Not here. He sent back one line. Then that dress is going to have the best day of its life. I washed my face, walked back out, and hugged my mother goodbye. It was the most deliberate performance I had ever given. And for the first time, keeping a secret from my family didn't feel like guilt. It felt like freedom. 3 days later, my phone lit up with a name I didn't expect. Grandma Eleanor. Eleanor Collier was 84, sharp as a tax audit, and living at Maple Grove Senior Residence in Salem, about an hour south of Portland. She was Mom's and Lorraine's mother, the woman who'd raised them both, and she almost never called. When she did, it meant something. Whitney, sweetheart, she said. Her voice was thin but steady. The way old oak sounds when wind passes through it. I got a pretty invitation in the mail. Your name and Meghan's name both on there. I just want to ask you one question. Okay, Grandma, are you happy about it? I pressed the phone hard against my ear. In 29 years, through every holiday dinner and every silent bank transfer, and every time I smiled when I wanted to scream, nobody in my family had ever asked me that. Not once. Not my mother, not Lorraine, not Meghan, not Tyler, nobody. Grandma Eleanor was the first. I couldn't answer right away because my throat had closed. 8 seconds of silence that she didn't try to fill. "Grandma," I finally said, "nobody asked me that. You're the first person." She let out a long breath. "I know my girls Whitney, Diane, and Lorraine. They're built like me in the worst ways. Always worried about what people see. But a wedding is yours, honey. It's not a stage for somebody else's show." I didn't tell her about the Maldives. I didn't tell her the venue was already cancelled. I just said, "I'll be okay, Grandma. I promise. I believe you," she said. And she meant it. After we hung up, I cried for the first time since the night I'd tallied the spreadsheet. Not from anger, from the simple, devastating relief of being seen by someone who actually cared whether I was happy. The last week of March, the pressure came from every direction at once. Mom called daily. Every conversation ended the same way. A hook pulled from the same guilt trip playbook I'd memorized by heart. "If you back out of the double wedding, you're telling me you don't respect this family. Aunt Lorraine says, if you don't cooperate, she won't come. And Grandma won't come either." She wielded Grandma Eleanor's name like a hostage negotiator, and it made my stomach turn because I'd just heard Grandma's actual voice asking the only question that mattered. Lorraine's attack came in writing. An email, subject line, "Family Unity," 3 paragraphs of polished condescension. "In this family, we share. If you choose to be selfish, you will isolate yourself. Your grandmother is 84 years old. She wants to see her family together. Are you really going to deny her that?" And then Megan sliding into my DMs with a message so perfectly passive-aggressive it could have been framed. "Hey, Whit just wanted to say I'm so excited about our double wedding. Derek and I are planning the sweetest surprise for you at the reception. Don't worry, I'll handle the decor half. You know I have better taste anyway." I screenshotted everything. Lorraine's email, Megan's message, my phone's call log showing 19 incoming calls from Mom in 7 days. I dragged every file into a folder on my desktop labeled 2025 March. Rosa had told me to save it all, and I did. When Mom called again that Sunday night, I kept my voice even. "I understand, Mom. I'll think about it." What I was really thinking about was a boarding pass dated June 12 and a beach ceremony 9,000 miles away. But she didn't need to know that. Not yet. April 5, a Saturday. Dinner at Aunt Lorraine's house. 12 people around a long dining table. Lorraine at the head naturally. Mom to her right. Megan and her fiancé Derek Voss across from me. Derek was 30, a real estate agent. Decent enough guy who always looked slightly uncomfortable at family events, like he'd wandered into someone else's reunion. Then there were 2 other aunts, an uncle, a few cousins, and Nathan beside me, his hand resting on my knee under the table. Lorraine clinked her glass before the salad course. "I'd like to raise a toast to our 2 brides." The room applauded. Megan beamed. I smiled and lifted my water. Mom leaned across the table. "Whitney, do you want to say something?" 12 pairs of eyes turned to me. I let one beat pass. "Then I'm just really grateful to everyone here. True, diplomatic, committed to nothing." Megan wasn't done. She pulled out her iPad and propped it against the centerpiece. "I put together a mood board. Tell me what you guys think." She swiped through. White roses with gold accents, a massive floral arch, a custom photo booth, and they're centered on every frame, Megan and Derek in elegant script. Nathan's and my names appeared once in the bottom right corner of a seating chart mock-up, 2 font sizes smaller. Nobody mentioned the difference. Maybe nobody noticed. Nathan noticed. I felt his knee press against mine once firmly. On the drive home, he was quiet until we hit the freeway. Then he said, "Your name was 3 font sizes smaller than Megan's." "I know. So, you know you're making the right call." I stared out the windshield at the rain and didn't answer because I didn't need to. 2 months and 9 days, that was all I had to survive. April and May disappeared in a double life I never imagined I'd be living. On the surface, I attended 2 more family planning calls, nodded through a group text about table linens, and even approved a sample menu that Megan forwarded with a smiley face. Every interaction was theater, and I played my part with the calm precision of someone defusing a bomb by pretending it's a birthday present. Behind the curtain, Nathan and I built the real wedding piece by piece. Our flights were locked. Portland to Dubai, Dubai to Malé, June 12, Seaside Haven Resort confirmed the 2-person ceremony package. Beachfront at sunset. A local officiant, a photographer named Amir, who sent sample galleries that made my chest ache with how simple and beautiful it all looked. 9,800 total for 3 nights in an overwater villa, the ceremony, and a private dinner on the sand afterward. The refund from Ridgewood Estate, 11,200, had landed in our joint account on March 28, exactly on schedule. Jill Petton's confirmation email sat in a folder I checked twice a week just to make sure it was still real. I quietly messaged about 15 close friends, not family, and told them the wedding plans had shifted and I'd share details soon. No one pushed. Real friends don't. I ordered a second wedding dress online, not the A-line from the boutique. That one was too tangled with Lorraine's smirk and Megan's condescending offer to take a photo. This one was chiffon, floor length 380, designed for bare feet and warm wind. And then there was the spreadsheet. Rosa reviewed every page, cross-referencing bank statements I'd pulled, 14 pages, airtight. She converted it to PDF and said, "You don't have to send this to anyone, but if you ever choose to, it's ready." If that word carried a lot of weight. June 14, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Ridgewood Estate, Portland, Oregon. I wasn't there, but I can tell you exactly what happened because Nathan's friend Marcus was on the guest list. He'd received one of the 150 invitations, and he sat in his car across the parking lot and told us everything later, down to the minute. Guests began arriving at 3:45. Women in pastels, men in summer suits, the lawn freshly mowed, the Oregon sun actually cooperating for once. Aunt Lorraine swept in wearing a teal mother of the bride ensemble like she owned the property. Mom wore lavender. Megan was somewhere inside, reportedly in a 4,200 dress that Lorraine had quietly put on a credit card. By 4:15, people started checking their phones. The ballroom doors were closed. No coordinator at the entrance. No welcome table. By 4:20, Mom called me. Voicemail. She called again. Nathan's phone. Voicemail. 3 more attempts in 10 minutes. At 4:45, Jill Petton walked out to the garden where guests were milling in confusion. She approached my mother directly and spoke in the measured tone of someone who had rehearsed professionalism for decades. "Mrs. Collier, I need to inform you that the contract with Whitney Collier and Nathan Brennan was cancelled on March 14, per Clause 7.2. We have no active booking under their names. The venue has been rebooked for a corporate event beginning at 7 p.m. Mom's face went white. Cancelled? I didn't know about any cancellation. A confirmation was emailed to the address on file on March 15, Jill said. You may want to check your spam folder. By 5 o'clock, 200 guests stood on a manicured lawn with no ceremony, no catering, no music, and no bride. Megan was inside in her dress, mascara streaking, Derek rubbing his forehead beside her, and the venue had given them 90 minutes to leave. Here's what I need you to understand about time zones. The Maldives is 9 hours ahead of Portland. So, while 200 guests were pulling into the Ridgewood parking lot at 4 p.m. Pacific, it was already 1 o'clock in the morning on June 15 where I was, and our wedding had happened 11 hours earlier. Let me take you there. 5:30 p.m. Maldives time, June 14. The sun was low and copper-colored, throwing light across water so blue it didn't look real. I stood barefoot on white sand in the chiffon dress, the 381, and my toes sank with each small shift of weight. Nathan faced me in a white linen shirt and khaki pants, sleeves rolled to the elbow, no tie, no pretense. There were exactly 4 people present: the officiant, a soft-spoken Maldivian man named Ismail, who'd performed over 300 beach ceremonies, and the photographer Amir, crouching low to catch the light. Nathan's vows were short and they wrecked me. You are not anyone's ATM. You don't need permission to be happy. From today, I'm your family and our family will never run on guilt. Mine were shorter. I spent my whole life waiting for someone to ask what I wanted instead of telling me what I owed. You were the first person who asked. You're my home. After the ceremony, we ate dinner on the sand. Grilled fish, coconut rice, a bottle of sparkling water because neither of us needed champagne to feel drunk on what we'd done. At 7 p.m. Maldives time, 10 a.m. in Portland, I posted one photo to Facebook and Instagram. 2 people on a beach, golden light, no shoes. The caption, June 14, 2025. Just us, just enough. No tags, no explanation. 6 hours before the chaos at Ridgewood even began. Now, before I continue, if you've made it this far and you're feeling any of this in your chest, I want you to know you're not alone. Thousands of people have sat where I sat, tallying up what they've given versus what they've received, wondering if they're allowed to say enough. If this story is speaking to you, do me a favor, drop a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. Because what happened next? It made everything before look like the opening act. Alright, back to June 14, 9 p.m. Maldives time. I turned my phone off for the ceremony and kept it off through dinner. Nathan and I sat on the villa deck watching the dark ocean breathe. And for 3 perfect hours, the world was exactly as small as we needed it to be. At 9 p.m. Maldives time, noon in Portland, I powered the phone back on. It took 45 seconds for the notifications to finish loading. 47 missed calls, 19 from Mom, 11 from Aunt Lorraine, 8 from Megan, 5 from Tyler, 2 from numbers I didn't recognize, 2 from Aunt Linda, 93 text messages. Mom's thread alone was a timeline of disintegration. The early ones sent around 3 p.m. Portland time were confused. Where are you? Everyone's waiting. By 4:30, they'd turned desperate. Whitney Collier, call me back right now. By 5, after Jill's announcement, they went nuclear. You cancelled the venue. Have you lost your mind? And then the final message sent at 5:47 p.m. 8 words that I read twice and will remember forever. You are no longer my daughter. We're done. Lorraine's thread was shorter and colder. You have destroyed Megan's most important day. There will be consequences. Megan, how could you do this to me? I'm standing in my wedding dress in an empty room. You ruined my life. Nathan read them over my shoulder. His jaw was tight, but his voice was steady. You don't have to answer tonight. Morning. I set the phone face down on the nightstand. The screen glowed through the wood for a few seconds, then went dark. I looked out at the ocean, and I want to be honest with you. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel triumphant either. I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, maybe ever. Light, like something enormous had been lifted off my back. The phone rang at 3:12 a.m. I'd been drifting in and out of sleep. The kind of half-consciousness where your body rests, but your mind replays the day on a loop. Nathan was out cold beside me, breathing slow and even. The screen lit up with Mom, and I watched it pulse 4 times before I picked up. She didn't start with hello. Do you have any idea? Any idea what I went through today? 200 people, Whitney. 200 people staring at me like I'm a fraud. I wanted to disappear into the floor. Her voice was raw, ragged, the sound of a woman who'd been yelling for hours and was now running on fumes. I sat up in bed. I could hear the ocean outside the villa. Mom, I never agreed to share the venue. Oh, don't start. You sent an email to our coordinator pretending I'd given consent. You printed 150 invitations with my name on them without calling me once. You turned my wedding into Megan's stage. That's because you're selfish. Family shares. You make good money. What does it cost you to help? You want to know what it's cost me, Mom? $83,247, that's what I've given this family in 7 years. Would you like me to go line by line? Silence. 8 full seconds. I counted. Don't you dare throw money in my face, she said. But the volume had dropped. She wasn't yelling anymore. I'm not throwing anything. I'm reading a spreadsheet I've kept since 2019. Every dollar, every transfer, every text message where you asked. She hung up. I set the phone down, pressed my palms against my eyes, and breathed. Nathan's hand found mine in the dark. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. I had said the number out loud for the first time and she had no answer for it. The next morning, June 15th, 5 p.m. Maldives time, 8 a.m. in Portland, I opened my laptop on the villa desk, the Indian Ocean flat and turquoise behind the screen, and navigated to the Call Your Family group chat on Facebook Messenger. 24 members, every aunt, uncle, and cousin old enough to have an account. I typed slowly, editing twice before I hit send. I know everyone is angry. I understand. But before anyone judges what I did, I'm asking you to read the attached file. It's a record of every dollar I've spent on this family from 2017 to 2025. Every transfer, every receipt, every screenshot of a text asking for money. The total is $83,247. The amount this family has spent on me in the same period, 0. I'm not sending this to hurt anyone. I'm sending it because the truth deserves to exist somewhere other than my private hard drive. I attached the PDF, 14 pages. Rosa had reviewed it line by line against my bank statements before I left Portland. Page 1 was the summary, year-by-year totals, and a grand total in bold. Pages 2 through 13 broke it down. Date amount, purpose, who requested it, and a thumbnail of the evidence, a bank transfer confirmation, a Venmo screenshot, a text message. Page 14 was a single table with 3 rows. Money Whitney spent on family, $83,247. Money family spent on Whitney, 0. Number of times family said thank you, 0. I pressed send and closed the laptop for 4 hours. Nobody responded. I watched the read receipts tick upward. 5/9/14/21. But the chat stayed silent. 21 people reading. Not a single word typed. At noon Portland time, Aunt Linda broke the silence. Oh my God, I had no idea. 12:15, Uncle Greg Whitney, I'm sorry. This is not okay. 12:30, Mom, you're airing family business in front of everyone. I will never forgive you for this. 12:32, Lorraine, disgusting. You reduced everything to dollars and cents. But the rest of the chat stayed quiet. And in that silence, I heard something I'd never heard before from my family. The sound of people who couldn't argue with the math. The numbers started moving within 24 hours, and I tracked them the way I track everything carefully. By the evening of June 16th, 8 of the 24 members had left the family group chat. Aunt Linda and Uncle Greg were among the first. 3 cousins I barely spoke to followed. Then 2 of Lorraine's bridge friends who'd been added years ago and probably wanted no part of the fallout. The chat that once pinged with holiday planning and birthday reminders was hemorrhaging members like a lifeboat with too many holes. Megan scrubbed her Instagram. The double wedding story vanished. The grid post with the gold foil invitation gone. But the internet has a longer memory than Megan planned for. Screenshots had already been shared in comment threads. Her follower count dropped from 12,000 to 11,400 in 48 hours. People were asking questions she couldn't answer. Then came the call I didn't expect. Nathan's phone buzzed on the second night. Derek Voss. "Man," Derek said, and I could hear it in his voice. The queasy realization of someone discovering the ground beneath him isn't solid. I didn't know the full picture. Megan told me Whitney was totally on board with everything. I feel sick. Nathan kept it clean. "I appreciate you reaching out, Derek. This isn't about you." Meanwhile, Mom posted a public status on Facebook. When your own child turns their back on family, you learn who really loves you. It collected 14 likes, 3 sympathetic comments. But 7. People asked what happened. And when someone, I still don't know who, shared the spreadsheet PDF in the thread, 4 of the 14 likes quietly disappeared. And then Tyler texted me. My little brother, 22 years old, a kid I'd paid $7,200 to put through a certification program. His message was 1 paragraph long, and it cracked something open in my chest. "I didn't know it was this bad, sis. I'm sorry I never said anything." I wrote back, "You don't owe me an apology. Just remember, don't let anyone do to you what they did to me." By June 17th, Megan tried the only playbook she knew, the victim narrative. She posted an Instagram story, long, text-heavy, no filter for once, that opened with, "I've been going through something really hard, and I just need grace right now." She talked about feeling blindsided and heartbroken without mentioning the forged email, the uninvited invitations, or the $31,000 in credit card debt that had made piggybacking on my venue so appealing in the first place. It might have worked if the spreadsheet hadn't already been circulating. Mutual friends, people who'd known both of us since college, left comments that were polite but pointed. "Didn't you know the venue was booked under Whitney's name? And the spreadsheet is all over the family group chat." Megan deleted the comments, but screenshots traveled faster than her thumbs. The real aftershock though was Derek. He didn't break up with her. But on June 21st, he told Megan the wedding was on hold indefinitely. His reason relayed to Nathan in a brief phone call. "If your family lied to Whitney and let me believe she was fine with everything, what else don't I know? I need to understand what actually happened before I stand at an altar." They weren't over. But the trust was fractured, and Derek insisted on couples therapy before any new date would be set. Aunt Lorraine predictably blamed me. She called Aunt Linda and declared that I had sabotaged Megan's happiness. But Linda quietly overlooked. Linda sent Lorraine a private message that Whitney would only learn about weeks later. "Lorraine, I read the spreadsheet. Whitney paid $4,200 for your 60th birthday party. Did you know that?" Lorraine never responded. And Megan went silent on social media for 2 straight weeks, the first digital blackout in 5 years. For someone who'd built her identity on being seen, the silence said everything. The fallout for Mom was slower, quieter, and more devastating than anything that happened online. Within the week following June 14th, the story spread through the extended Collier network, roughly 40 people across 3 generations. The spreadsheet PDF was forwarded at least 5 times that I could track, though probably more. And the question everyone was asking wasn't why did Whitney run? It was, did Diane really take $83,000 from her own daughter? The answer was 14 pages long, and nobody could dispute it. The first domino fell at Maple Grove. Grandma Eleanor called Mom. I wasn't on the line, but Tyler told me afterward, word for word, because he'd been in the kitchen when Mom took the call on speaker by accident. "Diane," Grandma said, "I raised you better than this. You used your daughter like a cash machine for 7 years. 83,000, I am ashamed." Mom cried. She cried for a long time. But she didn't argue. There was nothing to argue. The numbers were the numbers. The second domino fell at St. Andrew's, the church the Collier family attended every Sunday. People talked. Of course they talked. After 2 Sundays of being approached with careful questions and poorly hidden pity, Mom stopped lingering after service and started leaving through the side door. Then the third, and maybe the cruelest, Aunt Linda quietly volunteered to host Thanksgiving that year. "I think it's better if I handle it this time," she said so gently it almost sounded like kindness. But everyone understood what it meant. For 20 years, Diane Collier had organized the family Thanksgiving. It was her one piece of visible authority. Her proof that she mattered. And just like that, it was gone. Mom didn't call me for 3 weeks. The longest silence of my life and the first one that didn't feel like punishment. It felt like breathing room. June 20th, Portland International Airport. Gate C12. Nathan and I walked off the jetway with tans we hadn't earned and a marriage license from a country most of my family couldn't find on a map. Our carry-ons were light. Everything else, the notifications, the voicemails, the wreckage was heavy enough. The apartment smelled like stale coffee and the basil plant Nathan had forgotten to water. I set my bag down, opened the laptop, and the screen lit up like a switchboard. 214 Facebook notifications, 38 emails, 12 voicemails. The digital debris of a family implosion. I didn't open everything. Rosa had coached me before I left. When you get back, triage, only read what moves you forward. Everything else is noise. So, I filtered. Rosa's messages read. Tyler's read. Grandma Eleanor's voicemail. 7 seconds. Just her voice saying, "Welcome home, sweetheart." Jill Petton's final confirmation that the refund had been processed and the file was closed. Those 4. Everything else I left blue and unread. Nathan heated leftover soup, the kind that comes from a can, nothing fancy. And we sat at the kitchen table where 3 months earlier I'd stared at a spreadsheet and felt the floor shift under my life. So he said, stirring his bowl, "We need to figure out who gets to be in our life and on what terms." I pulled a legal pad from the drawer, the yellow kind, lined, the most unglamorous tool in the world, and wrote 2 words at the top. My boundaries, not a declaration of war, not a revenge plan, just a list, a line drawn in ink by a woman who'd spent 29 years not knowing she was allowed to hold a pen. The question now was, who would respect that line, and who wouldn't? Tyler's message arrived on June 22nd, 2 days after we got home. It wasn't a text. It was a full email, which for a 22-year-old felt almost ceremonial. Whitney, I read the spreadsheet, all 14 pages. I saw the line. 7,200, Tyler's certification program. I didn't know that money came from you. Mom told me it was from her savings. She looked me in the eye and said she'd been putting it aside for years. I believed her. I'm not going to pretend I knew and stayed quiet. I genuinely didn't know. But I should have asked. I should have noticed that you paid for everything and nobody ever said your name at the table. I want to pay you back. Not all at once. I'm on a part-time salary, but I'll figure out a plan. You'll get every dollar. I promise. I sat at my desk and read it twice. The second time, the line about Mom's lie hit different. She hadn't just taken my money, she'd taken credit for it. She'd let my brother believe she was the one sacrificing while I quietly wired the funds and got nothing in return, not even the truth. I wrote back, "Tyler, you don't owe me money. You owe me nothing. But I'm going to ask you for something worth more than 7,200. Don't let anyone turn you into what they turned me into. If someone asks you for money and follows it up with tears and silence when you hesitate, that's not love. That's a system. And you deserve better." He called me that night. We talked for 40 minutes, the longest conversation we'd had in years. By the end, I'd invited him to dinner the following Saturday. He became the only family member on the weekly call list. The only one who didn't need conditions because he'd already met them. He told the truth and he showed up. June 28, a Saturday. I spent the morning drafting an email I'd been composing in my head since March. Rosa didn't write it for me. She offered and I said no. This had to be my voice. But she reviewed it for clarity and tone before I hit send. The same way she'd reviewed the spreadsheet. Calm, factual, unassailable. Subject line. Moving forward. My boundaries. Mom, I love you. That's true. And nothing that happened changes it. But I can't continue a relationship where I am the one who gives endlessly and receives nothing back. Not money, not acknowledgement, not respect. 4. Us to move forward, I need 3 things. 1. You acknowledge that sending an email to Jill Petton claiming I had agreed to share the venue was wrong, not a miscommunication. Wrong. 2. You never again make a financial decision or sign anything on my behalf without my explicit written consent. 3. You stop comparing me to Megan or to anyone. I am not a supporting character in someone else's story. If you're willing to meet these conditions, I'm here. We can rebuild. It won't be overnight, and it won't be the way things were before, because the way things were before nearly cost me everything. If you're not ready yet, that's okay, too. I'll be here when you are, but I'll be here at a safe distance, Whitney. I read it aloud to Nathan before sending. He listened without interrupting, then said, "That's the strongest thing you've ever written." I clicked send at 11:04 a.m. The read receipt came back at 9:47 p.m., nearly 11 hours. I could picture her reading it at the kitchen table, maybe rereading it, maybe sitting with it the way I'd sat with the spreadsheet that night in March. She didn't respond. 1 day passed, then a week, then 2, and for the first time, her silence didn't crush me. It just confirmed what I already knew. The next move was hers and I was done performing. Lorraine's response came on July 2nd. 1 final email, 5 sentences, no warmth. Whitney, you have destroyed this family. Your spectacle was selfish. Your spreadsheet was manipulative. And your absence from that venue humiliated people who have loved you your entire life. I have nothing more to say. Do not contact me again. I read it once, forwarded it to Rosa for the file, and didn't reply. Some doors closed themselves, and the kindest thing you can do is let them. Megan's message arrived 3 days later on July 5th. It was longer, messier, and harder to dismiss. Whitney, I know I owe you an apology. I knew about the email Mom sent to the coordinator. I knew about the invitations before they were printed. I should have said something. I'm sorry. Then the second paragraph. But you could have just talked to us instead of disappearing. You could have told me to my face. That hurt. I sat with it for a day before responding. When I did, I kept it to 2 sentences. I spent 7 years talking to this family, Megan. It cost me $83,247 and 0 respect. Talking didn't work. She didn't write back. A week later, Derek called Nathan one more time. His voice was different. Tired but less rattled than before. Megan and I started couples therapy, he said. I think we both have a lot to figure out. I just wanted you to know. Nathan said, I respect that. Good luck, man. When he hung up, I asked if he thought Megan would actually change. He shrugged. Maybe, maybe not. That's not your variable to solve. He was right. Lorraine would never see it. Megan might someday. And I was learning something I wish I'd understood a decade earlier. Healing doesn't require everyone to apologize. It only requires you to stop waiting for them to. July 19th, a Saturday evening, our apartment. Nathan made pasta, garlic, olive oil, cherry tomatoes. The kind of meal that takes 20 minutes and fills the room with the smell of something honest. I tossed a salad. Rosa brought a bottle of red and a corkscrew because she said she didn't trust ours. Tyler showed up with a bottle of wine, too, a 12 Pinot Noir, and handed it to me with a look that was half shy, half proud. Bought it with my own paycheck, he said, not from anyone else's savings. Hannah Park, a colleague from Harrove and Ellis, who'd become one of my closest friends in the past year, arrived with brownies. Marcus is Nathan's college roommate, the same Marcus who'd witnessed the Ridgewood disaster from the parking lot, brought garlic bread and a story about finding a bewildered catering truck circling the venue that evening with nowhere to unload. 6 people around a table meant for 4, elbows touching, plates passed hand to hand, conversations overlapping in the way that only happens when no one is performing. Nobody mentioned Mom. Nobody mentioned Lorraine or Megan or the spreadsheet or the 200 guests or the Maldives. We talked about Marcus' new job, Rosa's impossible client, Tyler's plan to take night classes in the fall, the fact that Nathan had finally killed the basil plant beyond resuscitation. 3 hours, the easiest 3 hours I'd had in years. When everyone left and Nathan and I were rinsing plates at the sink, I looked at the table, empty glasses, crumbs, a stain from where Tyler knocked over the salad dressing and thought, this is 6 people, not 24, not 206. And every single one of them chose to be here. Total cost of the evening, $47. The cheapest family dinner I'd ever hosted. And the first one where I didn't pay alone. 5 weeks of silence. And then on August 2nd, my phone rang. I was at the kitchen counter chopping peppers for a stir-fry. Nathan was on the couch reviewing code. The screen said, Mom, and I stared at it for 3 full rings before I answered. Her voice was small. Not the furious rasp of the 3 a.m. call. Not the weaponized grief of the guilt trips. Small. The way a person sounds when they've been sitting alone with something heavy and have finally decided to set it down. Whitney, I read your email. I've read it several times. Okay, Mom. I need you to know I don't want to lose you. A pause. A breath that shook. I'm not good at this. I know. Another pause. I could hear the clock in her kitchen. The one with the rooster face that had hung above the stove since I was 9. The email I sent to the coordinator. I shouldn't have done that. It was wrong. She said the word wrong like she was swallowing a stone. I convinced myself you'd come around, that you'd see it was for the best. But I should have asked you. I know that now. I leaned against the counter and closed my eyes. She hadn't addressed the comparisons. She hadn't acknowledged the invitations. She'd met one of 3 conditions partially with visible effort. Thank you, Mom. That matters. That's a start. Does that mean we can talk again? It means the door is open. But the conditions in my email still stand. All 3. And I won't remind you again. You already have them in writing. She was quiet for a moment. Then, okay. We talked for 4 more minutes about nothing. The weather, a neighbor's new dog, ordinary words stretched carefully over extraordinary damage. After I hung up, Nathan looked at me from the couch. How do you feel? She apologized for 1 thing out of 3. It's not enough, but it's the first time she's used the word wrong about her own behavior in my entire life. I set the knife down. I'll take the crack in the wall. I'm not knocking it down for her. By mid-August, 2 months after the Maldives, I sat down and did what I do best. I ran the numbers. Not on my family this time, on myself. Since June 14th, with no more emergency transfers, no catering bills for someone else's party, no mysterious deposits into relatives' accounts, my savings had increased by $4,800 in 8 weeks. That was more than I'd saved in any comparable stretch over the previous 7 years. The math was obscene in its clarity. The single biggest drain on my finances had never been rent or student loans or Portland's cost of living. It had been my family. The other metrics shifted, too. Number of guilt trip phone calls received since the boundary email, 0. Number of stressful family dinners attended, 0. Number of evenings spent with people who actually wanted me at the table. 6. The pasta night. 2 weekend brunches with Rosa. A Friday movie marathon with Tyler at our apartment and 2 date nights with Nathan where neither of us checked our phones. At work, something was changing that I could feel but couldn't name until my boss Margaret pulled me aside after a client presentation in early August. "Whitney, I've noticed a real shift in you these past couple of months. More confident, more decisive. Whatever's going on, keep it up." 2 weeks later, the promotion came through. Senior Financial Analyst. Salary $104,000. A $12,000 raise that felt like more than money. It felt like proof that when you stop pouring yourself into a hole, you start rising. Nathan and I sat down that weekend and set a new target. $60,000 for a down payment on our first house. At our current savings rate, free from the family tax, we'd hit it within 2 years. And then on August 15th, Tyler sent a Venmo notification, $200. The memo line read, "Installment 1 of 36, certification tuition. Thank you, sis." I stared at that memo line until the screen went blurry, and I didn't wipe my eyes because some tears you earn. On August 10th, I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote a letter by hand, not an email, not a text. I sat at the kitchen table with a sheet of cream stationery Nathan had bought me as a just because gift. And I picked up a pen, a real one, blue ink, the kind that forces you to slow down and mean every word. "Dear Grandma, you were the first person who asked me if I was happy. I want you to know I am." My wedding had 2 people. No ballroom, number 200 chairs, no gold foil invitations, just a beach, a sunset, and a man who asks me every morning what I need instead of what I owe. I'm sorry you didn't get to be there, but I think you understand why it had to happen the way it did. You told me once that family is the person who asks if you're happy. You were right. And I need you to know by that definition, you are my family. You always have been. I'm enclosing a photo. It's me and Nathan on the beach. I'd love it if you kept it somewhere you can see it. I love you, Whitney. I slid the Maldives photo, the one from the ceremony, printed on matte cardstock into the envelope, addressed it to Maple Grove Senior Residence in Salem, and dropped it in the mail on my way to work. 3 days later, my phone rang. Grandma Eleanor, I picked up immediately. "Sweetheart," she said, and her voice was warmer than sunlight. "I hung your picture right next to my bed. You're beautiful. Nathan's a good-looking man. And the ocean? My goodness, it looks like a painting." "It felt like one, Grandma." "I believe that." A soft pause. "You chose right, Whitney. Don't let anybody tell you different." I promised her I wouldn't. And I meant it the way you mean something you've paid $83,000 to learn. So that's my story. I know some of you are going to call it a revenge story. I understand why. A cancelled venue, an empty ballroom, a spreadsheet heard around the family group chat. It has all the ingredients. But sitting here now, 8 months removed from that beach in the Maldives, I don't think revenge is the right word. Revenge is when you want someone to suffer. What I wanted was something quieter and harder than that. I wanted to stop disappearing. I wanted the truth on the table instead of locked in a private Excel file. I wanted my wedding day to belong to me. If any of this sounds familiar, if you're the person who picks up every check and never gets thanked. The one who drops everything when the phone rings and then wonders why no one calls on your birthday. The one who has been told your whole life that setting a boundary is the same thing as being selfish. Then I need you to hear this. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are not cruel for saying no. And you are not alone. $83,247, that was my tuition. I hope your lesson costs you less. But whatever the price, it's worth it because on the other side of that boundary, there's a table with people who actually want you sitting there. Trust me, I'm at mine right now. Here's my question for you, and I mean it. Drop your answer in the comments. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? A. Cancel everything and fly to the Maldives the way I did. B. Confront the whole family at the venue in front of 200 people. Or C. Stay quiet and go through with it. I want to hear your answer. And if this story hit home, share it with someone who needs it today. There's another story waiting for you in the description. I think you'll feel that one, too. Thank you for staying with me until the end.